Tag TV and Tag Radio. Be seen and heard by both technology users and technology producers throughout the state of Georgia and around the world. Low cost, big benefits, powerhouse online branded video and audio has arrived. Tag TV, Tag Radio, there's a lot more to know. This edition of Tech Talk is brought to you by GlobalSpeak.com, new media consultants, corporate video and audio communications, video and audio production and distribution, live and virtual event production. Tag TV and Tag Radio is a service of GlobalSpeak.com, creatively delivering powerful marketing, video, and audio solutions. It was just last May. New York City, a tough, seen-it-all group of technology executives, programmers, inventors, investors, all gathered at TechCrunch Disrupt. The unanimous winner for the coveted Audience Choice Award? Remember, New York City, TechCrunch Disrupt, bottom line, no mercy audience, and they all vote one unanimous winner. A young Atlanta-based startup that caught their entire crowd's attention, all based on a single value proposition: to become a time machine for your website. Huh? Greetings, everyone. It's Friday, September 14, 2012, and this is Tech Talk with Technology Association of Georgia President Tino Mantella. I'm your guest host, Frank Baia. After months of tweaking and beta test, CodeGuard officially pulled back the curtains, backed by a fresh couple of millions of dollars in funding from Inlay Investments and a host of angel investors that included Burt Ellis, Tom Noonan, Matt Chanoff, and Merrick First. CodeGuard is, well, blowing everyone away with its cloud service that allows any site owner to back up their website and revert to earlier versions while monitoring for inflections. Up to the Tech Talk, David Moeller, CEO and co-founder of the Atlanta-based ATDC startup company, CodeGuard. Oh, you'll want to hear all about the inventive website and backup service that blew them away at TechCrunch Disrupt in New York City, and at Venture Atlanta, and at Tag's Cap Venture, and at MIT Enterprise Forum, and oh yes, as a Tag Top 40 Most Innovative Company in Georgia. You'll want to hear David tell you all about CodeGuard and more. A tech talk with a new generation entrepreneur featured on ABC's American Inventor, who already has 5 patents, co-founded and licensed a prior technology to Whirlpool, and grew a startup SAT-ACT test preparation business to several hundred employees, millions in annual revenues, and led to an acquisition. All while graduating with the highest honors from Georgia Tech, earning an MBA from Harvard Business School, selected Top 30 Under 30, Tag Spirit of Endeavor Award winner, and Tycon Southeast Top Up-and-Coming Entrepreneur Award. The rapid rise of not just another startup in Atlanta, a living example of the engaging and energizing entrepreneurs that are the innovators that are in Atlanta's DNA as we Tech Talk, CodeGuard, and beyond with David Moeller. David, welcome to Tech Talk.
Frank, thanks for having me on.
Well, it's kind of a great opportunity for us and our listening audience to really experience somebody that's in the trenches as far as being creative and entrepreneurism is concerned. I certainly want to get into CodeGuard and some of the great things that are going on there, but let's talk a little bit about some of the things that you've done prior to this latest startup situation. Obviously, 5 patents. I think you've been recognized by a number of top organizations, Georgia Tech Alumni Association, Top 30 Under 30, and the Tag Spirit of Endeavor, and I can go on. Outstanding Leadership Finalist, and even the Tycon Southeast Top Up-and-Coming Entrepreneur Award. Give us a little bit of insight about what's all that chemistry about? Where's it coming from? And give us some perspective on what you're into and how you're doing it.
Sure. It's a good question. I'll try my best to answer.
I think I asked 20 questions. They're all in one, but...
After graduating from Georgia Tech, I kind of embarked upon a more standard and traditional career path, which was working for General Electric. I went on their sales training program and then held sourcing and operations roles. And it was a fantastic experience learning some of the rhythm and rigor and best practices that some of our, flagship Fortune 50 companies have. But I wasn't sure if I wanted to stay in that type of an environment. And what I thought could be really interesting was taking some of those best practices from a big company, some of the tried and true systems, and applying them in smaller company and entrepreneurial environments where, the logic was, if I go to a Siemens or another large company, they have their own set of practices and principles that are helping them to succeed. But for a smaller company or a startup, there really is nothing. There's really no ground rules. And a lot of startups and smaller companies get started and just based off of the way that the founder had an idea and then started focusing on it, most don't have a lot of these external systems and sort of best practices they can bring to bear because they haven't had those experiences. So after having some big company experiences, I wanted to see if, that sort of thesis is true, which is, you can apply some of these best practices to startups. Now, the startup world and the entrepreneurial world is very different. And, I don't want to say that they're absolutely the same thing. They're very, very different worlds in that, the need to utilize guerrilla methods and, really focus on what you can get without spending money. How can you market or promote something for the lowest cost possible? How can you try to drive word-of-mouth adoption? Those aren't things that in a big company environment you really have to think about. You've got budgets for things. The question is, well, what's our budget as opposed to how are we going to do this? How are we going to attain this outcome without a budget? I think it's a very different way of thinking of things. But with that said, once the company gets to the point when you can start applying some of the best practices from bigger companies, and I think you really can do some very interesting and unique things.
Well, looking at your resume and your background, mechanical engineering, highest honors from Georgia Tech, and MBA from the Harvard Business School, I think you have the basics, the foundation for what would be, I guess, perceived as traditional business acumen, and yet you're dealing in this, let's say, dynamically fluid environment. I guess I'd be curious, chicken and egg, do you look at technology and the evolution of technological advances and try to apply them to a business opportunity, or do you have a business opportunity in mind and go looking for the technology?
I think it can go both ways, where you can either see a market opportunity and try to apply technology to it, or find unique technology and then try to find the market application. I think you can go both ways. I think the easiest, probably by far, is seeing some type of a market need and then trying to apply technology. Mm-hmm. And that really was the genesis of CodeGuard. The increase in hacked websites, the increase in what's called virtual blight, which is just, these websites that are sitting somewhere in a dark corner and no one is paying them attention and they're potentially distributing malware. That kind of idea that there are these small and medium business owners who have websites. Everyone has to have a website to do business. I mean, there's 50 million small and medium businesses who have websites but don't have a web IT staff. There's 170 million bloggers who have a website just to share their views with the world. And those individuals and small businesses, they just want it to work, and they want to feel protected, and they want to have peace of mind that this business asset that they now have, or this means of distributing content and their thoughts to the world, that it's safe. And if something goes wrong, that they can fix it and fix it easily. And so for CodeGuard, it was much more, we see this pain, or we think we see this pain. It's a tough process of going back and forth and really trying to confirm it. We think we see this pain, and we think there's a willingness to pay if we can produce a solution. So that, the CodeGuard example is more, let's try to apply technology to this problem, and let's try to apply it in a way that's scalable so that we can, help tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, just millions of people across the world.
I think a lot of us have, the buzzwords are, one of them is clouds and all that kind of thing is going on. It's certainly been probably overkill now, but also one of the things you hear a lot about now is big data and the whole analytics situation. And I think partly what you're also describing is in that big data there's information overload, and the problem is attention. But I love the term that you use when you talk about virtual blight and the idea of content that's up there that isn't being productive, I guess, for lack of a better term, or even destructive. We've kind of segued into CodeGuard. Let's talk a little bit about you've launched it in the public beta at TechCrunch, Disrupt last May. What's been going on since winning the Audience Choice Award there?
So, we were really excited when we launched. We had some confirmation from our private beta users, a small number of users some in Atlanta, some of my friends who have companies or have access to someone that we brought in to test what our product was, and we were thrilled when we launched to win the Audience Choice Award because we felt it was tremendous confirmation that we were focusing on a problem and an issue that a lot of people wanted to have solved. Since then, we've built our team, we've expanded our user base, and we've really focused on the product. So when we launched, it was only functional for someone who had a website that we could access over FTP. And the reason we did that is we wanted to have the lowest common denominator because most websites on the Internet can be accessed over FTP. But we didn't have a database component. We didn't have a WordPress plugin. We didn't have a plugin for some of the software that hosting providers use to run their businesses. So after TechCrunch Disrupt, we were contacted by hosting providers who said, can you integrate with our software? Can we offer this to our users? We said, well, we'll see. Some of the hosting providers have hundreds of thousands of customers, and so launching at TechCrunch, we had a single dedicated server with a capacity for about, let's say, 3,000 users, and that was our estimate. Now we have, scores of instances on Amazon that are, rather than having the single dedicated server, we spin up and down servers, up to 40 to 60 of them on Amazon as we need them. So our back-end infrastructure has been upgraded. It's all very, very scalable. We use Amazon's cloud essentially to provide this service because we don't need to go buy a rack of servers, and then when we have more customers, buy another rack. Mm-hmm. We can add them through Amazon, and that enables us to focus more on the service layer that we're providing, as opposed to going out and buying servers and becoming an expert at that piece of things.
Well, that goes back to not only from your technical background but your business background, because I think that one of the things that we constantly talk about here on Tech Talk is vernacular, keeping up with technology, and certainly the whole concept of cloud and that concept of what we would now call outsourcing. I mean, what you're talking about is basically a virtual concept, right? I mean, it's a case where that's sort of not only something that you're applying to CodeGuard, but it's kind of I wouldn't say new, but certainly at the edge of what's considered new as far as a business model is concerned.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely correct that strategically our decisions about where we're going to spend our time, because in a startup you've got very limited time, and
well, in your case, though, you're getting a lot of traction. I mean, obviously, you've almost got a couple of $1 million in funding. I mentioned TechCrunch, and that's out of New York City, but also Venture Atlanta. You're an ATDC company, a startup company, but you've been involved with the Tag Cap Venture, MIT Enterprise Forum, even obviously the Tag Top 40 Most Innovative Company Award. Mm-hmm. Those are all indications. It's funny. I mean, it still doesn't necessarily pay the overhead, but when you've got the kind of resources that you're building, both in terms of credibility and recognition from your peers, as well as recognition from somebody with a checkbook, which is pretty substantial, it kind of says that you must be doing a lot of things right that are giving indication that you're definitely on the right path. Let's go. There's so much that I want to talk about, because you cover so many aspects, from the entrepreneurial aspect to sort of a new business model that we talked about a little bit. But now go into a little bit more depth in terms of CodeGuard itself. Now, it offers backup and monitoring for small business who don't have a full-time IT staff. You went into a little bit about the mechanics, but how does that work in terms of the client? Yeah.
So the way that it works is we'll do an initial backup for a client's website. It could be their client or a developer or designer who has, let's say, 50 to 100 clients, and they want to back all their sites up. So what they'll do is they'll just enter in the credentials for the server where the website's located. They'll pick the directory, and then the first backup begins. Normally, the backup will complete, we'll say between 24 and 48 hours. On average, it's about 4 hours, but we like to under-promise and over-deliver. And so after that first backup finishes, and it normally, it takes more time than any backup that occurs after that, because all the backups after that are differential. But what we do is we'll open a connection to that server once a day, and we'll look for changes to the website. And that would be additions, modifications, or deletions. And if we find any, then we'll send those changed files back to our server, and essentially what we call taking a new backup, but it's differential. And then we send an email to the website owner telling them what changed on their site, so that if they made the changes themselves, not a big deal, it's just a confirmation that we're doing our job. But if something appears that shouldn't, then they are notified before their customers are that they've been hacked or something has gone wrong with their website. And then they can log into CodeGuard, and they can pick a prior version of their website to restore. And that's really the key to the service, is that we do the initial backup, and then each day we're monitoring for changes, taking new backups if needed. And the goal is that if something happens that shouldn't, a file is overwritten, someone makes, a file is deleted, a malevolent employee leaves and, does something to the site, that website owner can roll back and undo the changes. So what we say is we provide a time machine for your website, because essentially any damage that happens, you can go back and go to that last known good version of your site.
What's insane is that the amount of complexity and the kind of security that, it's almost like unlimited, the kind of things that you've got to think about. On one level, when I first heard about CodeGuard, I thought to myself, well, why would a customer want to use CodeGuard? Now I'm thinking, why would you not want to use it? Because you don't really have, things happening so quickly. The impact of a hack on your credibility, on your continuity with your customers, the importance of it from a value proposition standpoint, it can only a few hours of a miscommunication can be disruptive. It is even talking now, when we talk about social media's impact, even on geopolitical situations, current events that have occurred just over the last couple of weeks, the last few days, in talking about messaging that either did or didn't come from, say, the White House or something.
Mm-hmm.
It's in a much grander situation with that particular example, but certainly it's relevant to a company that's got mismessaging happening because of a hacking situation. Go into I think you've covered it, and I think most of our listeners are relatively sophisticated enough to get it. But from your perspective, as you're relating to a customer prospect, down and dirty, what do you do when you say, why do your customers use CodeGuard? What would you tell me?
So it's an interesting mix of reasons. We were surprised when we interviewed our customers and surveyed them that a large portion like CodeGuard because of the peace of mind that it provides. They just like knowing that it's there should something happen.
Yeah.
Some like the ease of use and the simplicity that it's not. It was, we started with a very complex product, and we've tried to simplify it so that anyone could use it. So some like the ease of use. Others like the fact that they receive the change alert notifications when anything changes on their site. Others just say, hey, it's a no-brainer. There's no reason why I wouldn't do this and have this level of protection and a tool that enables me should something go wrong, whether it's a hack or we make a mistake ourselves. So I think, that ultimately it's having something in the background. Our price point is very low. It's $5 per month per website. So it's nothing that's going to break the bank, and we wanted to price it affordably so that we could offer it to a large distribution.
That's like I said. That's amazing. That's like I said. How could you afford not to do it at that kind of a price point too? That's pretty impressive. I was going to kind of drift into a little bit about was it the size of the content of the backup, or how do you determine price? But it's a fixed based on when you say website URL in terms of the dollar cost.
I'm sorry, is it fixed price per URL?
You mentioned $5 per website.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That is a great question. What is a website? So for $5, you can back up via FTP static content, and I'll get a little technical here, static content, and then your dynamic content if it's in a MySQL database. Okay. You can also choose to use the WordPress plugin to back up your site, or if you are, if your account is at a hosting provider that's a partner of ours, you log into your control panel, which is where you enter your credentials to log into the website for your hosting provider, and you'll see our icon. You click on that icon, and it'll automatically back you up. So there's a couple of different ways that it can happen, but at a high level, essentially, it's one URL, and you get that, and that's $5. Technically, I could get a little bit deeper, but the way that we like to think about it is it's one URL.
Well, I think the bottom line of it is that anyone that's got any kind of issues whatsoever that we've covered, and I think all of us do, they're going to want to make contact with you because it's the kind of thing, like I said a couple of times, and that is you can't afford not to do. As all the good conversations do, time flies in a format like this, and we've covered so many things on a quick overview, that 40,000-foot platform, as well as gotten granular as far as CodeGuard. I'd be remiss when you're talking to an entrepreneur and to a visionary like you, doing what you're doing already with CodeGuard. What's next? What's next for CodeGuard? What's next for David?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I sort of oscillate to maintain sanity between a 3 to 5 year view and the 3 to 5 day view, which is what's just in front of me right now.
I hear you.
And so the big thing for us, we're just moving in some office space inside the perimeter over in Old Fourth Ward. Really excited to be moving in here and really establishing our presence and finding a home that we can grow in. So that's sort of what's in front of us right now. We've got to integrate our technology with some of our big partners. So we have some big partnerships, and some of our partners who have hundreds of thousands, some have millions of users. That integration takes a lot of time. So our next steps are integrating our technology with some of our bigger partners, and simultaneously we're also focusing on web developers and designers who have, let's say, 50 to 100 websites or clients, and we're rolling out some features and some functionality for them. So some of our users today have, let's say, 70 to 200 websites with us, and we have hosting providers who have hundreds of thousands. And while we're integrating with our big partners, we're also focusing on some of, let's call it like our micro distribution, a web developer designer that does have a smaller number of clients, but we're rolling out some functionality and some features specifically for them to help manage, let's say they want to let their clients log into CodeGuard to see what's changed on the site or to show them what they've done on the site because we track every change. So that's an area that we're focused is trying to make that user base, that segment really excited while we integrate with our big partners. So that's kind of what's next for us.
Well, I can tell you this, and that is that Atlanta is getting more and more and more recognition. There's a lot of areas where Georgia, we say from a technology standpoint, Georgia leads and fintech and health IT and those kind of things. But when it comes to innovation, I think also that's another area where Georgia leads, and it's brains like you, innovators like you, entrepreneurs like you that are not only building their own reputation in their own businesses, but they're building a reputation for Atlanta as well. So hats off to you for the great stuff that you're doing. Continued success. Thank you for taking time out of what's got to be a chaotic. I like it when you talk about oscillating. You've got a lot of things on your mind and a lot of things on your plate, but you took the time to catch up with us here on Tech Talk and to share some of that with our listening audience. So thank you for taking time out of your schedule for joining us today on Tech Talk.
I really appreciate that, Frank. And one thing I do want to say before we sign off is, one, thanks to the audience for listening, and two, CodeGuard wouldn't be here without the support of the Atlanta community. Our board of advisors and board of directors is very strong. We've got support of local entrepreneurs who've been successful, who've invested in us after making money, and they've taken chances and they've risked. And there's also been local service providers who have helped. And I think that there's no way that CodeGuard and what we've accomplished, small as it may be, that we could even have attained that without the help of this community. So we are indebted, to ACDC, to TAG, to all of the resources that Atlanta and the Southeast have for entrepreneurs and for startups. So, I want to thank you and thank the audience, and, we're very grateful and excited about our next steps.